At a league thing, let's bring Dave Wannstedt in with us, the owner of a couple Super Bowls and a national championship, obviously, former head coach of the Bears and Dolphins. Coach, I start this off before you even get going. You know, it's been 23 years since the Dolphins have won a playoff game, and you and Jimmy are the last two coaches in Miami to won playoff games for the Dolphins as head coaches. Pretty crazy, huh?
That's real crazy. Yeah, it is. I think it just illustrates the point, Danny, how tough it is, one, to get to the playoffs, two, to win a playoff game. And when you talk about winning Super Bowls, I mean, it's easy to say, but we all know who's coached and played the game. It's very difficult. I'll give you one better than that. The last time the Bears won a road playoff game, I was the coach of the Bears.
Everybody thinks it's easy being in that main headset, and I don't think they realize how hard it is to be in that headset there. Let me ask you a question, Coach. Vic Fangio, believe it or not, has been around forever. And I was telling everybody when I was in Connecticut, you know, my high school coach called me and goes, "Hey, you know, he was at Milford Academy, and all the Pitt guys used to go up there, Coach. Like Chris Dolman went there. You had a guy, Dwight Stone, who was a running back. And I was going to go there to get my grades up. Then Maryland came in for me before I transferred to Miami. But he goes, "Don't you remember Vic Fangio was recruiting you from Milford Academy?" I'm like, "No." He goes, "You sat right across the table from him." So then he goes to North Carolina, and he's been in the league forever. Tell me, Coach, what's your take on Vic Fangio and his legacy as a D coordinator in the NFL?
Well, I know Vic. I mean, I've known Vic for years. And when he was the coordinator of the Bears, I went up, you know, I do a lot of Bears work here. So I went up to training camp and OTAs, and we talked and had great conversations. And I'll tell you what Philadelphia is getting, if you look at that Dolphin defense last year, they started off with a new system, kind of feeling their way. And by midstream, before they got crippled with injuries, I think they had 6 starters out, which is unreal. This defense all of a sudden was like a top 10 defense. And the thing that you're going to get with Vic, I think you described it pretty darn close, Danny. You're not going to get a lot of blitz. Will he bring some pressure, some 5-man? Sure he will. But he is more into the front 4 guys, multiple coverages, 2 quarters, 3, little bit of man. And he does not, I tell you what, I don't know big plays, if the Eagles gave up big plays last year or not, but the one thing Vic's going to do, he's going to eliminate the big plays. And we talk about sacks. I think the Dolphins at one point, they were second in the league, I think, in sacks behind Baltimore. I mean, they did a great job. Multiple guys had them. But I think that's a great hire for Philadelphia. I really do. He's an old school coach, blue collar guy, toughness. I don't think the environment in Miami really sat well with him. You know.
Yeah, no, and Coach, as you know, when you sit there and you hear guys complaining about, Vic Fangio's style of play or the way he communicated, my comment was good. I don't have to like my coordinator. I just want him to put me in a position to succeed. I mean, I want to get home. I mean, this is not about, wins. We'll become really great friends when we win. Nobody's friends when you're losing, right? I mean, nobody's hanging out with each other when you're 4-12.
Right. No, and you know what? That's when people leave. Who's ever coming in new, you wait till the new coordinator. And I don't know the guy. Obviously, he's a good coach, or he wouldn't be where he's at now. I don't know what scheme he's going to use. But whenever you come in new, Danny, as a coordinator, as a position coach, particularly as a head coach, everything is better. Oh, my goodness. I remember when I left the Bears and Curtis Conway, who was my first draft pick out of USC. And Curtis and I, to this day, let me preface this, are very good friends. We did a lot of work together at the Pac-12 when he was doing work out there and I was with Fox. And Curtis, so I leave, and I made a mistake by looking in the paper, and Curtis made the comment, well, they're finally going to take the handcuffs off me and start throwing the ball. I said, okay. Now we fast forward. I'm at the Dolphins, and he's at the Chargers. I'm sorry, San Diego. Yeah, it was the Chargers at the time. And so we're getting ready to play that game down there. It's in San Diego. And I had Sam Madison and Pat Surtain. And they're my two corners. And I said, come here. See that number 80 over there? Just do it. I went back to my Miami days. I said, you run him into the Gatorade table. You do what you got to do. Don't let him. So anyway, we win the game pretty good. And I'm walking across the field to see the other head coach. And Curtis comes up to me and he hugs me and he says, Coach, God, I missed you. Any chance you could get me down there in Miami?
Oh, man.
And I when I saw him out the Pac-12, I told him, I said, I said, I'll tell you what, get you at Miami. And I was a guy that wouldn't, so it's all fun now. But my point goes back to, the Dolphin players, when a new guy comes in, everything is going to be fantastic. And they're going to be saying that about Vic in Philadelphia. So that's just part of the game. You take it for what it's worth and keep moving.
Coach, one thing I'll ask is that I remember when you came into Dallas and you put the 43 in and you put the Canes G-style defense in, and we were trying to teach it to everyone. Randy couldn't get it, so we retired. Ed still hung around. I mean, we had, Danny Noonan was a nose. So you really didn't have the personnel to play that 43. And when you're a guy like Vic and you're coming in and you're kind of changing up what, they do, and it doesn't work right away, how hard is that for them to have blind faith in what you're talking about, not to deviate off that? Because you went 1-15. Think about where you were. You were 1-15, Coach.
Right.
And your guys are sitting there going, and back then everybody was playing the 34. I don't know how you guys didn't go like this. Hey, Jimmy, everyone's doing this now. They got linebackers. They're coming off the perimeter. They're rushing with edge rushers now. How hard is it going to be for him to stick to what he does if this thing doesn't have instant success?
Well, I don't think it will be. I think Vic's got a lot of credibility. I think the players know that. The head coach has to support him. The GM's going to support him. I think the fans in Philly, the tough Philadelphia crowd, I think they're going to like Fangio's no nonsense, no silliness attitude. It's tough, blue collar, Philadelphia type mentality. And I'll tell you, even as they're learning, the one thing that he will do, if he was a big blitz guy, I'd say, oh boy, you're learning there, you're giving up touchdowns. But when you play a lot of zone on the back end and you're not going to – he won't be giving up big plays. Now, if he is, I would say this right now, you don't have good enough players, Dan, because it's not going to be the scheme. The scheme works. The second year when he was at the Bears, when the Bears won the division, they led the I don't know. I know they led the NFC North. I don't know if they led in turnovers. They were top 5 in defense. So he knows what he's doing. And maybe to some degree, some of these players need to be turned over. I don't know. I haven't studied them that close. But if the scheme isn't working, it won't be because it's the scheme. It's going to be, or the coach. It will be because some of these guys just can't do it anymore.
See, to me, I think there's a corner issue. I mean, you know what happened? Coach, and tell me if this is now becoming a philosophy in the league. It's like keep everything underneath, think and dunk. Don't give up the plus 25. All the things we used to have on the board, Coach, you'd say keep them under 240 yards, 270 yards in total offense. Yep. Keep them under 19 points. Don't give up plus 25s. Do you think that's becoming more of a mentality now in the league where because the linebackers is not really deep pretty much across the road when it comes to the league anymore, tight ends are becoming more important. You got to cover those guys. Do you think it's about keeping everything underneath now and not having a defense like the Ravens of 2000 or those Buck defenses or your defense? Do you think that's the mentality league-wise?
I think I would say no, but I think that when you see teams play against the Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jacksons of the world, they don't want to give up the big play. So everybody's more conscious and they're playing zone because the quarterback runs. That's what Spags, defensive coordinator for Kansas City, the first half of that Buffalo game, I think Josh Allen had 65 yards. They had about 100 and a quarter. All they were doing now was keeping it in front of them so they could play good coverage, but also take away the quarterback if he started scrambling. And they cut the rushing yards in half and cut the quarterback scrambles. So I think it's if you got a quarterback that runs, I think you'll see more of it.
Coach, it's Super Bowl week, and I want to get some of your takes on this, and some of your memories on this. When I say Super Bowl week to Dave Wannstedt, what's it mean to you, Coach?
Oh, it means a lot of family and friends had a great time that I can't remember. I mean, and I say that halfway kidding because we were grinding, and we did the physical work back in Dallas, and then we went out there with the mental part because there's so many things going on. But you're unfortunately as a coach, you don't get a chance to truly enjoy the week and the process because you're watching tape and you're double checking things and all this. Then you got obligations that you got to do some things related to the Super Bowl. So it's an exciting time. I mean, we knew where we were at, and we knew what we were playing for, and we knew that you don't get those opportunities very often. So our guys were good. We had the youngest team in the NFL that year, and so they were really as hungry and willing to listen. We didn't have any old timers that have been to, other than Charles Haley, we didn't have guys that had been to Super Bowls before, done anything where all of a sudden our way is not the way they did it before. So it was a good week. We try to keep it just like normal, and the results, it just happened,
Coach, I don't think people really understand who you, Jimmy, Butch, or any of those guys. I used to see, and it was rare when we lost or something, how emotional you guys would get because of the amount of work you put into it. It's one thing for the players to put the work in, and we're emotional too, but man, you guys never looked up, Coach. You never looked up and enjoyed anything you guys were doing. And by the way, Coach Johnson told me a couple of days ago, and I made them work for it. They were the lowest paid assistant coaches in the league when I brought all their asses over here to Dallas. Hey, you think that Washington trip home when we played like shit, and they didn't get any food on the airplane? Aikman's telling me, yeah, we're flying home from Washington. We didn't play very well. And Jimmy goes, they're not eating. There's no dinner. Nobody got dinner. I just don't think you guys really see that guy they see on Fox now. That's not who I knew. That's not the guy I knew. You too. I tell everyone the story. We killed Pitt 38-3. Dave walks in, flips every goddamn gator. You son of a bitches. You turned Ironhead into Dorset. And I'm going like, bro, we won this game, right? You guys aren't the same dudes, man.
Well, no, I mean, obviously we fought that fight, we moved on. But yeah, Jimmy, I always sat next to him in the front of next to him on the seat in the plane. And man, we had a lot of fun. Thank God we won a heck of a lot more than we lost, because those plane rides home when we won, there was nothing funnier or good time. But when we lost, it was just a matter of who he was going after, the players or coaches or stewardesses or flight attendants or the pilot. I didn't know. You never knew.
Coach, I want to show you this, and I showed this to everybody here. This is the first letter that they sent out, Dave and Jimmy, and it was to go to Thousand Oaks. And when those guys started out at Thousand Oaks, that year they were 1-15. Coach, surely you had to be, when you guys saw the last couple of minutes ticking off and you won the Super Bowl, you had to go. You had to think about that first year and that first year out in Thousand Oaks, to how far you guys had come and that the mission was accomplished and what you did. That had to be a moment like that for you.
It was 5 weeks of two-a-days and pads is what we did in Thousand Oaks, Danny, if you remember. 5 weeks. and we gave him a day off. I remember, I'll tell you, one of the most enjoyable guys and professional guys that I've ever had a chance to coach, and you were a teammate of him there for a while. It's Ed Too Tall Jones.
Oh God, I loved
And
Ed.
and I remember that he came into Jimmy's office one morning, and he said, "Coach," he said, "here's my fine money for breaking curfew, for not showing up, and for getting here, missing the meeting in the morning." He says, "I'm going to LA. I'll see you tomorrow at noon." And Jimmy come down and he said, "Man," I remember him saying, this is the NFL. And apparently once a year at training camp, Too Tall paid the fine up front, even with Coach Landry, and headed to LA and took the night and came back. And so we, it was a learning experience for sure, but so many great memories. And, when you have a young team, the players are willing to work, and Jimmy was great with Too Tall. I mean, he respected him so much. I mean, he's out there running those crazy ass gassers with you guys that we ran, and 16 110s. Oh. And nobody knew how tall Too Tall was. I mean, how old he was. To this day,
he was 38 years old, I think, running those 16 110s. And I'll tell everyone, hey, it's 16 110s, and the big guys have to make it 19 seconds with 19 seconds break, and the other guys are 17 and 17. And let me tell you something. In my time, 4 years being with them guys, pro and college, I never made it once. I mean, that thing was I remember Coach going like this, asthma Fields over there. He told some Clemson kid who was a tight end. I think you guys drafted him in the 3rd round. He kicked him off the team. We're all sitting there. Danny Noonan goes, what? I go, hey, you got to make these 110s, man. By the way, they'll look at you okay if you miss 1 or 2, and they'll rerun you in them. But if you miss half of them, dude, don't do that. Drum will look at me and go, oh my God, 110s. He would be so afraid of those things. Now, his birthday. Hey, by the way, his birthday was yesterday, Jerome's.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, good. Doesn't get any better.
Hey, Coach, finally, who do you like Sunday? 49ers or Chiefs?
You know what? You know how I look at this thing? I believe, and this is all my opinion, that San Francisco has the best talent. They got the best players as a group on all levels. In other words, pass rushers, linebackers, secondary guys, running back, receiver, tight end. I mean, talent-wise, they're the team. But I'll tell you what Kansas City does. Kansas City has the best coaches that make in-game adjustments of anybody in the league. We talked about the thing with Spags, what he did in the Buffalo game of going from man to zone and this and that and shutting them down. And you look what Andy Reid did last year. That Super Bowl game against the Eagles, they were they were down by 10. Philadelphia's winning. Mahomes got a hurt ankle, and they're playing the #1 sack team. And I promise you, the Philly said they're going to come out and throw the ball. Mahomes can't scramble. He's hurt. Let's just put our ears back, and here we go. And what does Andy Reid do? He starts handing it to Pacheco and handing it to Pacheco and handing it to Pacheco. And Philly mentally, physically, they weren't ready for it. And so last week, I mean, and Patrick Mahomes has finally, in my opinion, turned that corner where Tom Brady was. I remember doing the Super Bowl for Fox, Danny, when New England played Seattle out in Arizona. And Tom threw 7 passes in a row that were 4 yards or less. Boom. They were playing, our quarters coverage. They were playing the umbrella over the top. Boom. So I'm watching that game last week against Baltimore. And after the game, Harbaugh said it. Baltimore's defensive scheme, I thought, was great. They were not going to give Mahomes the big shot. And Kelsey had their longest pass, I know, coming out of the half, 21 yards. But Baltimore was counting on their offense, scoring points. not turning it over 3 times. But Baltimore, so with Patrick Mahomes, it almost, I'm sitting there watching this saying, he's throwing Kelsey a 2-yard pass. He throws the check down to the back. He doesn't even look down the field, 3 yards. Kelsey, 4-yard pass. And I'm saying to myself, this is Tom Brady. This kid gets it. He understands the big picture. And when your quarterback understands what you got to do to win, Danny, you know, from a defense, a special team. So when he gets the big picture, man, they're tough to beat. And that's where Kansas City is with Mahomes. To answer your question, I have not made my bet yet. It's going to be a tough one, you know, because talent in games like this, you got to believe that San Francisco is going to make a big play, in my opinion, to win the game. But I don't know. I hate betting against Reed and betting against Mahomes. I'm not ready to make that decision yet.
Coach, I'm going to end it with this. I was watching, and Joe Buck asked me a question. He was doing an interview with Coach Johnson. And I haven't asked Jimmy this, but I'll ask you this. You know, they singled out me, Irvin, and Jerome for being like kind of crazy guys that were on those teams. And they were like, and Jimmy goes like this. He goes, you know, that swagger wasn't really there before you guys showed up. It was kind of like our group, that 85, 86, 87 guys that really started that. And I heard him, and Jimmy's like, you know, he was talking about how proud he was of how we could be focused all the time. I know we weren't all the time, but in games we were the most least penalized team most of the time every year. Why did you guys let us do all that stuff? And you let us get away. I mean, again, I'm not, folks, I'm not talking about anything. I'm talking about the way we talked shit to people, the way we intimidated people. You guys never had a problem with that, but today's coaches would have a problem, and coaches back then had problems like Holtz and those guys. Why did you let us do all that stuff? And you guys never came down on us for that, ever. Yeah. I don't ever remember going, hey, you might want to shut up. I'm telling Bosworth he's the most overrated player in the country. Jerome saying something else about someone else. Switzer looks like a fool over there with that cigarette in his mouth. We're just doing this before games. You guys never cared. Why?
Well, Dan, I think we did. Okay, we just never said it.
Okay, this is an epiphany. Okay,
we never. At least me, I never said anything. But no, you know what? And it really started with Jimmy. He wanted. You know, he just always believed that if you couldn't be you and your personality, that you would not, you know, and to play great football, it's an emotional game and you got to be all in. And if you feel like you can't be yourself emotionally, you're not going to be as good a player as you can be. So I think Jimmy understood that. And he, you know, now, nobody was ever. If you were late for a plane, you weren't going. You know that. If you were late for practice, you weren't starting. You were going to be running laps. So I mean, you know, we had a disciplined team, as you said.
Yeah.
But yet, you know, we had a lot of fun.
Hey, Coach, we were in Pittsburgh. I have Alonzo Highsmith there, and a bunch of rookie guys, or a lot younger guys, are sitting there. Russell, maybe, and some of these other guys. When we went up, I think it was West Virginia. Because back then you had to fly into Pitt and you had to bus 3 hours into Morgantown. It was a pain in the ass. And I remember me and Alonzo start laughing. All of a sudden, I see this guy coming from the front of the he comes from the front of the line, and it was our grub line, and he starts coming back there. He looks at the young players. This is a business trip. I will put your asses in a cab and send you home. And then he's looking at them, and then he looks at Alonzo and me, and he goes, and that means everyone. And I went like this. Okay. We were on them trips, man. They were not friendly trips, dude. I mean, you know what? It's funny, Coach. All the shit we talked and all the fun we had, I don't think people behind the scenes realize how many guardrails we had set up. We had to do a lot of things to get to that. And to make what that program was and what that program's reputation was, we had a lot of guardrails to get through to make that happen. So you guys were awesome to us, man. And you know what? And I say this to you, Coach. You guys have treated me the same since I was 19 years old, and I'm in my early 60s now. You've never changed. You guys were the same people that you are today. And I told Coach Campo that. I Coach Wise that. Everyone. I tell them, man, you guys never changed. You were genuine coaches, and that's why you guys had massive success.
Well, I think players can see through it if you're not.
Oh, yeah.
And sooner or later, they realize that you're not being sincere, and it catches up with you. But we're just happy. Jimmy and I talk about you all the time. He says, you're going to go on and do that damn Sileo show. And I says, yeah, if I can help Danny out. I says, we were talking what a great it is that you're such a success and doing such an awesome job. And that makes us feel good too, Dan.
Absolutely, Coach. The only coach I never really liked, and I don't think you guys did, and I won't comment any further, I never got David Shula. Coach, I leave it there. I love you, Coach. Thank you so much, man. I'll talk to you down the line, Coach.
All right, Danny. Anytime, buddy. Bye-bye.
You got it. That's our good friend, Coach Wannstedt. Absolutely sensational to me. And I say this to you guys. Seriously, man, all those coaches, when I was 19 years old, and all these guys that came from broken homes and all that, and these guys knew exactly what they were dealing with at all times. And it was really a great staff. And it didn't shock me that all those guys went on to Dallas and had the massive success they had, because they were thick as thieves. These guys put the Herschel Walker deal together that made all the things happen. They were talent evaluated. I'll tell you what, my program struggles now. My program struggles right now with, guess what? Talent evaluating. Butch, Dave, every one of those guys that were on that staff were not just play calling DCs or D-line coaches. These guys could spot a guy like Cortez Kennedy and go, this kid's a superstar. And then spot a guy like Russell Maryland, who had two scholarship offers to some place like Toledo and Miami. These guys are phenomenal guys, man. Just sensational. All right, hit the like button. Keep it here on the National Football Show.